GP, except the GP I've got now has been like, oh, well, you could just, think about getting pregnant and that will probably cure it.
When I was 16, the doctor suggested that I fall pregnant to get rid of the endometriosis, because at that stage they believed that would get rid of it. My mum actually believed as well.
I had just met a delicious, delicious man at the age of 21. We had been seeing each other for 3 months when we had been told baby or hysterectomy.
I was devastated. I was 21, in his office crying. And I said, but I'm not even seeing anyone. And he said, we'll go out into Civic tonight and have a one-night stand.
Now, being an 18-year-old, pregnancy isn't the first thing on your mind.
When I was 18, the doctor told me to go on the pill until I was ready to have a baby, but not to wait.
He suggested that it will get better once I've had children, and being 12, that's ridiculous to suggest.
That was quite confronting.
Certainly as a 15-year-old was quite daunting to hear if we waited a year you wouldn't be able to conceive a child.
When I was 16, he said your options are have a hysterectomy or get pregnant.
And till finally I was able to have one baby, and for 9 months I was symptom-free of endometriosis, but it came back.
Around 12 months after the pregnancy is when I started having a lot of trouble with pain and flooding.
So I now had 2 babies and still had endometriosis pain and awful, awful heavy periods.
And to go and relay that to a partner that a gynaecologist has suggested that pregnancy would be a cure is very confronting for the partner.
And I also don't think it's fair to bring a child into the world just to, cure me. That seems ridiculous.
When you're diagnosed with endo, it is such a strange mix of emotions, as all of you guys, I'm sure, can understand, because on the one hand, you're feeling relieved that you finally have a name for your pain after all these years of this confusion and not really knowing what's going on, having all these seemingly random symptoms, and then all of a sudden you can put them all together under the one umbrella, and it's quite nice to have a name for your pain. But on the other hand, you're in total shock because you've just been diagnosed with this terrible disease, in which case many of us have never even heard of it. I had never heard the word endometriosis when I was first given a diagnosis of endo, so I, of course, had no idea what that was actually going to entail. But then your doctor offers you this amazing solution, and I think that many of us have experienced this. This happened to me when I was 21. I'd just been diagnosed with endo, and my surgeon, a lovely man who is still my gynaecologist to this day, I let him peer into my cervix every 6 months for a colposcopy and query me on when I'll be planning on starting a family, which I'm not anytime soon. He said, if you were to get pregnant and have a baby right now, you'd be fine. Mum and I left that appointment feeling absolutely astounded. We were confused, sort of excited. It was weird advice, but kind of you have fertility in the back of your mind, of course, so it sort of makes sense to maybe start trying for a baby at a younger age. It was just so much going on. It was incredibly confusing. But then we started to think about it and think, well, if our trusted doctor has kind of said that this could really help, then how can we take advantage of this unexpected solution? So we started to think about it. Logistically, of course, there are a few issues for me. I was completely broke, incredibly unwell, living with chronic pain, unable to work, barely making it to uni, living with my parents, not to mention I didn't even have a boyfriend at that time. So how exactly would I get pregnant short of going out into the Civic and having a one-night stand? So that's when Mum and I knew we had to get crafty, and over a bottle of red wine, things got a little carried away and escalated, and we decided to go on the hunt for a sperm donor. And at this point, I would like to invite her to tell her side of the story, which is probably quite different to mine. So over to you.
You'd think we'd be quite intelligent people, wouldn't you? I mean, and there we were going through lists of people who could get Sylvia pregnant. And she didn't actually want a husband at that stage, and I'd been a single mum, so I kind of figured out, well, maybe we could look after this baby, but still the sperm donor. So who was going to be the sperm donor? I had a really lovely old friend whose son... No. Female. Hang about. Female friend, and her son, just a beautiful young man, had just come out, and I thought, well, they're probably devastated that they might not get grandchildren with James. I mean, he's a lovely, lovely fellow, so maybe we could ask him to be a sperm donor. Then their family will be happy, our family will be happy, and we could be great-grandparents to this little boy. And I actually made an appointment to go and see my friend. And she couldn't see me for a couple of days, so you'd think I'd have a couple of days to cool down and think this clearly. No, I was so excited. This was it. I was not. Anyway, I went to have lunch with my friend. I drove over the bridge, and I was very excited. This is going to be great. And as I got closer to her house, I was thinking, how actually will I say this? You know your son James has just come out and he's a lovely boy. You're probably disappointed you won't maybe not have grandchildren. Sylvia's got endometriosis and she needs to get pregnant straight away. What do you think we can cook this up? And fuck no. Obviously, by the time I got out of the car, I was thinking, this is not going to work. How ridiculous.
He was also living in Europe at the time and we'd never met.
Minor details. You know, you could fly it over, maybe fly you over. Anyway, I realised this was nuts. And what was I doing? Even thinking of such a stupid thing. But you know, that was only a few years ago. We didn't know it wasn't a cure. We thought it was. I mean, that was our way of coping with this peculiar idea, get pregnant, stop this disease. But we took it seriously, and I took it that seriously. And we still believed it, actually, until we started filming the interviews for our first conference. And then, when we heard that doctors were saying it to 11-year-olds, we thought, this is plain weird. Have I said enough?
Do what you want, darling. So, as Mum said, interestingly, we never questioned this advice. And, you know, Mum in particular, she was a researcher for the media. She's well-read, well-educated, used to being a discerning person and looking into the facts, and that all completely went over our heads. And I think that's often what happens when you are in a doctor appointment, because there's an innate power imbalance as soon as you're in the room with a healthcare professional, because they know more about health and medicine than you do. You generally place a lot of trust in that person, and so if they tell you to go and do something, most of the time you will go and do it without getting a second opinion or without fact-checking or cross-checking that. So I was so sick, and together we were so desperate at that stage that we actually considered curing my illness by me getting pregnant, which is embarrassing to say that now, but of course this happens to so many women. Since starting EndoActive, I think, as Lesley said, we now know that this is fake news. Pregnancy does not cure endo. Hysterectomy does not cure endo, and while there are plenty of treatments available for women to try, there is no cure. There's no cure for endo, so we can't just throw around this word, not yet. And we really hope that this will change soon. Which leads me to my main point, which I've become incredibly passionate about, particularly over the last 12 months, which is, why are doctors prescribing pregnancy as a cure for an incurable disease? There are so many issues that arise from the advice to just go and have a baby, like it's that easy anyway. And it's this throwaway line that is so fraught with ethical dilemmas. Kerry, who you heard from in the video, she was 16 and told that pregnancy would cure her endo, still at school. Kate, can you imagine the pressure placed on this brand new relationship? Like, how do you even begin that conversation with a new boyfriend? Hey babe, I know it's only our 6th date, but like, do you want to start a family soon? Can we have a baby, or should I just have my uterus removed? This is just the most strange and conflicting advice that I've ever heard. Fill your uterus with a baby or have it removed. Like, which one is it? Erica. A one-night stand in Civic, so classy. Civic, by the way, is like the Times Square of Canberra, kind of, if you can call it that. Erica's doctor in this instance has advised a 21-year-old to have unprotected sex with a stranger to cure her illness. Really good advice. He's also advised her essentially to become a single parent because a one-night stand implies that you'll never see that person again. Beck, who's here today? Another 16-year-old advised to get pregnant or have a hysterectomy. One or the other. More conflicting and mythical advice. Laura, promised a cure, which didn't work. So psychologically, when that happens, if any patient is under the impression that they're going to have a temporary or permanent relief from a procedure and it doesn't work out that way, that's a huge shock and a huge letdown. Oh, and also she's then faced with looking after a newborn while in pain, which is hugely problematic. Susie, for me, raises the most twisted aspect of doctors prescribing pregnancy as a cure for endo. Children are not treatment options. The decision to have a baby should not be for our own symptomatic relief. It's not like a hormonal treatment or a pill or a painkiller, like the OCP or Visan. These are all things that you can start taking and then stop taking if they're not really working out for you, giving a few headaches, or you're not really enjoying them that much, you can stop them. Not so with a baby, with a child. You are kind of committed to raising that human probably till you die. It's, well, till they're an adult, or, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a kid. At some stage, for a long time. So I just find this absolutely abhorrent, and this particular issue is the ethics surrounding children as treatment options, which I think is essentially what it is to prescribe pregnancy as a cure for endo, is something that I've become particularly passionate about. Here we've got Susan on the right and her daughter Indy on the left, and this is a short video I'd like to play for you.
Like, she came to our house because I was in pain, and Mum was there with me, and she said, if you have, like, after you have a baby, the pain isn't as bad with your period.
How old were you when she said that?
12.
Twelve years old. Like, it's just absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, if it's inappropriate to advise a 16-year-old to get pregnant, and that 16-year-old is still legally a child, then what does that mean for advising a 12-year-old? But while Indy hasn't been told by this doctor to have a baby at age 12 specifically, she has been told that a baby will help her pain. It's inappropriate for a doctor to prescribe pregnancy to a 16-year-old, like I said, but to discuss fertility in relation to pain relief with a 12-year-old girl is absolutely appalling. Should a child be forced to consider her future fertility while her male peers enjoy a carefree childhood? Like, how unfair is that? Aside from the fact that the doctor's advice to Indy is not evidence-based, which is a crucial part of practicing medicine, she is simultaneously instilling unnecessary fear that Indy will be in pain until she has a baby. And she also said after you have a baby. She didn't say if you have a baby, implying that it is some sort of a rite of passage that you will go on to be a mother and have a child. Like, she may not be interested in that at all. And also she's instilling the false hope that pregnancy is a cure in an adolescent whose priority should absolutely not be reproduction. What good is it to tell a kid who's living in agony that there may be a solution, or that there will be a solution for her 10 years down the track after they have a baby? To make myself clear, I'm not saying that doctors should not discuss fertility with their patients who have endo. We know that endo can cause fertility problems, and it's entirely appropriate for a healthcare professional to discuss with their endo patient at the right time their fertility. Of course, that's important to bring up. But what I'm talking about right now, what I find the most concerning and for which there is no logical explanation whatsoever, is when a doctor suggests that a patient with endo gets pregnant or has a baby to cure her endo or even as an effective form of treatment. This is just not okay. To suggest something as life-changing as having a baby as a form of medical treatment is completely unethical. And to prescribe pregnancy as a cure for an incurable disease absolutely has to stop. Thank you.